I'm gonna give folks just a minute or so to trickle in here. All right, let's go ahead and get going here. Welcome to AI for Operators. This is an event series. I am Mike Stone. I'm one of the co-founders of the Gnar Company. I'm here with Nick Maloney, the other co-founder of the Gnar Company, and we're really looking forward to having you along here for our first session, meeting Claude and getting great output. I want to start by zooming out a second and just talking about why we're doing this. At the Gnar Company, we work primarily with B2B non-technical companies. Many of these companies now have AI mandates from investors or a board, or they get their news on social platforms or other sources that make them panic and feel behind. But across the industry, most AI investments are not actually delivering on the value they promised. We tend to take a practical approach to our work. This is not a smoke and mirrors are intended to drive a big wow factor. And most of the industry does not operate this way regarding AI implementations. So it is our goal to help your organization effectively adopt AI by first helping you wrangle it and understand how it can help you in your day to day. So this is intended for a non-technical audience. We're first going to show you what Claude actually is and what it can do for you for someone who runs a business but doesn't write code. And then we'll teach you communication skills that get your relationship with AI to go from this is a toy to this just saved me half a day. And that's using a prompting framework. This is going to be taught mostly through a demo. We'll be using a real world 50-page RFP, and we'll take two approaches, one with a deliberately weak prompt and then a strong one so you can see the difference live. But by the end, you'll have seen a real business task that gets completed in minutes that would have normally taken hours. And you'll know how to get the same output yourself. Um, Looking at the agenda ahead of us, we have about an hour. We will be talking about what Claude is and why sometimes the first interactions with the AI can quickly go from wow, this is amazing to pretty disappointing. We'll talk about this RCTFC prompting framework. I know that just rolls off the tongue and is second nature now. You'll learn all about what this actually is and how to apply it for optimizing the output that you get. We'll spend most of the time diving into the live demo and then take some Q&A towards the end. So let's get into it here. Claude is an LLM or large language model. It's made by Anthropic. Most of that does not really matter in this case. What matters more is what it can do. I'll also say that I'm going to focus this on Claude, but you could replace Claude in this case with ChatGPT or the other, major players in this space. Um, at our company, we work within Claude because we have tried them all and we find that it's the best for our use case. It's a little bit like what's better, McDonald's or Burger King or Coke or Pepsi. So you could easily take what we're going to teach today and apply it with another LLM, but we're going to focus um, on Claude. You want to think of Claude or whatever LLM you use as an extremely well-read, fast-thinking colleague who never gets tired, never forgets what you told it 5 minutes ago, and can process a 100-page document in seconds. This is not a search engine. It's actually going to read and think and write and reason along with you. It operates in what's called a context window. Think of this of like the equivalent of how much you can hold in your head at once. For Claude, this translates to roughly 500 pages of text in a single conversation. With the Opus model, which we'll be using, that's why when we do our demo with this 50-page ERP, it will work. Claude won't skim the document. It'll actually read the entire document and give us some really great output because it can keep it all in context. It's also why if you keep conversations around for too long, you can overload the context window, and that's where you start to get hallucinations and some wonky behavior coming from the LLM. But and in future sessions, we'll cover what to do in those scenarios. Um, for complex reasoning, you can also work with Claude to have it think step by step before responding, or kind of coach it up as you might a colleague in how to get the type of output that you want. Claude is going to run as a web app. You could go to Claude.ai. It's a desktop app, a mobile app, and the conversations will sync. We at the Gnar use a Claude paid team account. We do that for extra usage and for privacy. So something to consider if you haven't been using Claude a lot, for especially if you're going to be uploading sensitive documents, make sure you're on a paid account. You also get a lot of additional usage from a paid account. So something to think about as you get more into the weeds. When we think about what Claude can do for you as a business leader, kind of break it down into these 5 categories. It can read and summarize documents. So that could be contracts, RFPs, reports, compliance docs. It can write and email. So those would be things like, or sorry, write and edit. So it could write emails, proposals, job descriptions, investor updates, you name it. It can analyze data, so you could drop in a spreadsheet. You could ask it to find patterns, compare periods, and flag anomalies. You can work with AI as a thought partner to help you think through decisions, weighing pros and cons and risks or second order effects. And you can use it to help you prep for meetings. You can upload a brief or a bio of someone you're meeting with, or last quarter's numbers, and help get some preparation material there. Um, and obviously, there's much more that it can do, but each of these tasks that I just mentioned could take, anywhere from, let's say, 30 minutes to several hours. With Claude, these will take you a few minutes, but really it's only if you ask well. And that's really what we're going to be covering next with this RCTFC framework. So at a high level, Claude is incredibly capable, but it can't read your mind. So giving it a vague instruction is going to force it to guess and make assumptions. And the more assumptions that it makes, the higher the likelihood that those assumptions will be wrong or the guess will be wrong. It comes back to the colleague conversation. If you were to tell someone on day one of, their new employee onboarding at your company to write me a report, you would get something mediocre at best. But if you told them, write me a 1-page summary of Q1 performance for the board, focusing on revenue growth and customer retention in the same format as last quarter's reports, and here's all of the data that goes into it, you would get something a lot more useful. And that is the same principle with this prompting framework. There are 5 elements to the RCTFC framework. Starting with the role, this is telling Claude who it should be. So you might say, you are a financial analyst or you are a proposal manager to set the lens for the prompt. Next is context. This is the background that Claude can't infer. So what is the situation? What happened before? The task is your single biggest lever for quality. So you want to be explicit here, not something like help me with this, but create a comparison table or identify the top 5 risks. The F is for format. This is describing what the output should look like. Should this be a table, an email, a slide outline? Again, if you don't specify, Claude's going to guess. And finally, the C is for constraints. These are word counts, tone, explicit things to leave out or assumptions not to make. And I'm not suggesting that you need to have all 5 of these in your prompt every single time, but when your output is off, you might want to check which one of these 5 is missing, and that's usually the fix. I'm going to follow up to this meeting with a whole bunch of information, cheat sheets and prompt templates and stuff like that. But there's in that will be this kind of cheat sheet where it'll describe the problem, the potential fix. So if you have a response that feels generic, you could add more context like the audience or your role or specific constraints. If there's an issue with the word length, just be specific. Say 2 paragraphs or under 100 words or 1 sentence. If the format doesn't match what you need, just show an example or describe the structure you want. If the tone is wrong, you can describe the tone in plain language, or you could provide a writing sample for Claude to match. If you're using AI, or if you begin using AI, you will hit one of these this week without a doubt. And when you do, the fix is usually just 1 sentence added to your prompt. And we will show this live in our next demo. So this demo, we are taking a real life RFP that we have received in the past, and we're going to go over our process, what we do manually, and then what we can do with AI. Nick, maybe I'll pass it to you real quick to describe the RFP that we are going to use for our demo.
Sure. It's as Mike mentioned, this was a real RFP that we responded to, and when we were building out this curriculum, we wanted to use like real world examples to show some of the problems that we solve. And it's very common for us to respond to uh, government public RFPs in their very wordy technical documents that go into great detail, like everything that needs to be included in the contract. This one specifically, it's several years old, but still relevant, is for a large mobile application for the Massachusetts Steamship Authority. It's since been awarded because it's public domain. We felt it was safe to share because a lot of them are under the NDA. But in here, you'll find everything from timelines to milestones to acceptance criteria. And it just provides a really good demonstration for some of the capabilities of Claude and how we use it.
Awesome. Thank you. And so this is, a pretty extensive 51 page RFP with a scope of work defined, but features throughout. And typically what we would do when we get these RFPs is we'd spend significant time reading it, highlighting it, figuring out what we can do, what we can't do, deciding if we want to spend the time pursuing it further and drafting a response. And so as we break down these steps, this is all work that AI can help us with, that if we can have really effective prompting, we can turn this process from probably a half a day of work to, as you'll see, 20 minutes or so. So first, we are going to do this a not so great way. So I'm going to open up Claude Desktop here, and you can see there's 3 core modes that Claude provides. There's chat, co-work, and code. we'll get into all of these, but for the sake of this demo, we're going to stay focused in chat. Um, and I am going to upload this RFP and paste in a response. Or paste in a prompt, I should say. So this is a bad prompt, but I'm going to say, look at this RFP and tell me what you think. Despite the dates in this RFP being from 2021, consider this a current date 2026 RFP. Do not do any web research regarding this RFP. So I'm giving it a pretty vague prompt, but I have some constraints in here. I'm telling it not to do any web research. I'm giving it a little bit of context of, treat this as current day despite it being from 2021, just for the sake of the demo, but let's ship it and we'll see what happens. So Claude is now going to begin thinking through this, and you can actually open this up as Claude will show you its thinking in real time, and it'll give you this additional detail about what its thought process and how it's thinking about the prompt request that you provided it. And this will change as it evaluates different things, and as it considers the RFP and my prompt to figure out what should I be doing here. Most of the time, we can just leave this stuff closed. But if you do want kind of the inside look into what Claude is doing, you can certainly get that. And it's kind of taken its time here because we're on a high thinking model, but pretty soon we should be getting a response from the model saying I should give them a direct, structured, strategic assessment rather than a something or other. Okay. So here's what it says. This is a winnable bid, but the scoring is built to favor an incumbent or a travel tech specialist, and almost the entire win path runs through neutralizing a single criteria. Here's my read. The rubric is the whole game, and it's portfolio heavy. So I won't read this entire thing, but it's doing a really good job. This is valuable. It clearly read this RFP pretty thoroughly and gave a pretty good summary of this bid. And, if it thinks that it's winnable, as well as the CMS question is the technical trap. So it's giving value. But as I said before, with my process of figuring out, okay, I need to not only consider this, I need to understand the requirements of this and draft a response to this. There's some value here, but this actually isn't particularly useful to me. And I can't hand this to somebody. I can't really make a decision from it. And so this can be one of those kind of wow moments. It's almost oxymoronic, where this is almost a wow moment for AI, but also a point where you might give up because, yeah, this is really cool, but it's actually not helping me that much. So I'm going to tweak this a little bit to use that RCTFC framework in a new chat. So I am going to upload that same RFP, and now I'm going to put in a different prompt. You are a proposal manager at a professional services firm. I just uploaded an RFP we received. Despite the dates being from 2021, consider this present day 2026 RFP. Do not do any web research regarding the RFP. Read the entire document and give me a markdown table of every requirement they're asking for, organized by category. Flag anything buried in appendices or footnotes. So you can see now I have the role uh, being the proposal manager. I've got plenty of context. I've got the task outlined. I'm just saying the format as a markdown table with the requirements in it. I've got constraints around web research. And so I would expect to get a much more useful response from what I'm asking for using this framework. Um, Nick, while this is parsing the output here, do you want to briefly go over what like Markdown is? I realize everyone on the call might not be familiar with like what a Markdown table as the format might be.
Yeah, you'll hear us reference Markdown quite a bit. It's just a very simple, like lightweight text-based document format, and it's useful for LLMs because it's a plain structure. It's very easy for the models to both read and generate it, and it ensures consistency when working with it versus something like PDF, which can consume a lot of like tokens and time because sometimes it has to convert images and different structure to read through. With Markdown, it can read much faster. It knows the structure. And then same for outputting. It can write the output a lot faster because it's just a text document, but it gives just enough structure to make it useful for humans to also read and write.
Yeah, I mean, so you could make your format. You could say, make this a Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheet or a Google Doc. But in this case, we just want this kind of quick table that we can parse. And a lot of times, like especially with Google Docs, you can copy and paste using Markdown into them. So it's a nice, easy format to use. So we now see that Claude has read the full RFP, including the proposal forms and the milestone payment terms. Uh, I've built a clean compliance matrix as a markdown file you can drop straight into your proposal tooling and work the response against. So it is now building this markdown file and taking the full RFP requirements and creating those in the file. We should get this output soon. Nick, do you want to cover while this is happening? I mentioned we're using Opus 4.8 here, and we have this high effort. Do you want to maybe briefly go over the different like families of models and effort levels?
Sure, and I'll keep this brief because this could probably be its own workshop here. But there's currently three main models that Claude uses: Opus, Sonnet, and Haiku. Opus is the most capable. It's really good at complex reasoning, working with uh, large files, multiple files. And in terms of tasks, it's good at things like system design, like high stakes analysis, uh, generating like really complex project plans. The trade off is it's slower and it's more expensive. Next is Sonnet, which is widely considered the balanced default. It's good at everyday writing, coding, analysis, medium sized documents. And oftentimes it's helpful to start with Sonnet. And then if you don't like the output or you need more in depth, use that. And then there's Haiku. That's the fastest and cheapest. It's simple. It's good at high volume tasks like summarizing, classifying, and just quick edits. And then you'll also hear us reference effort level. And effort level is really like a dial that you can use to fine tune like how much like internal reasoning the models do. And the easiest way to think about it is it's the dial that you can use for cost, quality, and speed trade-off. So it's not that it's going to produce like inaccurate results, but you might find that with Opus, you need to spend time to really do in-depth analysis. You don't care how long it takes, and you want to put forth a lot of effort. Or maybe you just have some quick tasks and you need some bulleted lists of something and you don't want to spend a lot of time, then you can use a lower effort. And oftentimes it's helpful to experiment with different settings. But oftentimes for something like this task, we'd use Opus, where other times we'll kind of default to Sonnet.
Great. And so we have our markdown document here now. we could see it's flagged some items like fair competitor disclosure, federal funds clause, but this will be broken down uh, by category as we requested. So each category has a number of requirements, and then we can see the source as well. So we've got the requirement, the notes about it, and the source. Um, this is the core scope of work, technical platform architecture payments, integrations. So this is starting to get really helpful. This is along the lines of what I would do normally in my process to evaluate and respond to an RFP. But let's just see, I believe we've got, yeah, 16, 17, we've got I guess 19 categories. So this is starting to get really helpful. And normally, I'd spend a little bit more time going through this and just making sure that these requirements are accurate or maybe um, fiddle with them a little bit, but really starting to get a lot of value. We're going to take this even further though. So we have our requirements, but now we want to know, are we actually a good fit? So what we try to do, because these RFPs take a long time to respond to, is we want to fail fast. We want to know right away, is it worth our time to actually go through the process of responding to this? So what I'm going to say in this same chat window, so this is very conversational, again, like you're talking to a colleague. I'm going to say now help us assess our fit. For each requirement, mark it as strong fit, partial fit, or gap. Here's some context about our company. The Gnar Company is an AI native software partner focused on delivering three core solutions: AI strategy and fluency, custom software development, and legacy software modernization. We are 100% US based and only staff experienced software professionals on every project. More information at www.thegnar.com. So let's see what this gives us. We're giving it some additional context on the company, and a new task for it to complete by assessing our fit. Um, and you could see, even though we told it not to do any web research on the RFP itself, it's actually going to go to the nar.com and pull information about us. So I gave it some information, and it's going to go out and get as much as it can. Um, in future sessions, we will cover other strategies where you won't have to describe the same things multiple times and just get more and more efficient as we go. But for now, this should do it. Although I'll say we're cheating a little bit because Claude does have memory between conversations. So despite only giving it a few sentences and a link to our website, um, it will have some additional memories that it can apply. Um, so let's see what it's going to say. I pulled your site. A few things stood out as directly relevant to scoring fit. Your public sector client work, the MBTA, Mass Department of Early Education, and CARE are both public entities, which speaks to the RFP's experience working with public entities requirement. So it is reading our case studies on our website, and it is taking what it knows about us and comparing it to the RFP requirements to assess our fit. Um, I've built the fit assessment as a companion file, keeping the same numbering as the requirements matrix so that two join together. Let me create it. So now it's going to create a separate file that will be a very similar looking table with an additional column that will be the fit. And what's going to be really helpful from this is we'll be able to get a gut sense from this of um, are we a strong fit for this RFP in general? And where are the gaps in this RFP where we have to start identifying maybe partners to go into this with and be the prime on the contract, but bring in some subcontractors to fill certain gaps. Um, and so that's really what we're looking for from this step in our process. Obviously, working with AI like this requires or like results in some downtime, right? I'm filling it by talking about how we work with AI, but in general, these are the times where you might get some emails done, or you might kick off another request and you kind of find yourself managing these different uh, agentic sessions. And we'll get into this some more in later sessions of the event series as well, but we'll stay kind of single threaded for now. Um, Here we are with our fit assessment. Scorecard summary. We have a strong fit for a majority of the technical build, a moderate partial fit, and some small but decisive gaps. So the reservation API and travel and tourism, this 36-month proof that 24/7 support, seasonal photo and video production, those have been identified as some of the gaps. Um, so now we have, again, those same uh, requirements, but we have this fit assessment as well. So we can see here we have, gap that's NAR is unlikely to hold a designation. This is a scored item. We can capture this via a certified contractor. Let's see if there's some other partial or gap fits here. Um, AWS web cameras. This is unusual but low complexity, just not a thing they've named. Fine. Um, so a lot of these partial fits are probably things that, you know, I can fill in or I can add my own judgment to this to make the call, but the gaps are going to be the real ones where I look to maybe bring in a subcontractor. Here's a good example. Seasonal photo video for a full year. This is a gap outside of a software shop, creative production contractor. So it's actually giving me suggestions on like what I can do about this. Um, and that is helpful in that initial like fail fast. Okay, I can see this, and already I can see this is a good, like a strong fit RFP for us. We want to continue working on this. And so I want to take this a step further. Like I said, I want to actually start drafting a response here. So what I could say is, based on this analysis, draft an outline for our RFP response. For each section, include a 2 to 3 sentence summary of what we should emphasize. For the gaps, suggest how we might address them honestly. The format is numbered sections with bold headers. Keep it under 800 words. So we'll see what this comes back with. This one should be a little bit faster in response than some of our other requests in the demo because just generating this text response here, and it's already done a lot of the hard data crunching. But we're actually going to see a draft where it will not only give us some suggestion on how to respond, but highlight um, how we can address the gaps. And let's see here. You can see exactly what we asked for. Our cover letter executive summary is first with a few sentences on that. And then let's see. Experience and past performance. Lead with Whoop for third-party integration engine. Keepsake for cloud Rails apps with payment and messaging. Collide for iOS and Android apps in both stores, each with launch dates and staff detail. Be candid that ferry reservation integration specifically is delivered with our partner. Position our track record as the proof we integrate complex operational systems reliably. Tie every example back to the authority's dashboard, mobile, and API needs. So it's giving us real concrete detail of how we should be responding to this RFP. Um, let's see, mobile application, security, PCI accessibility, supporting services. So package the maintenance retainer, version control, sync sandbox at 99% uptime story, address the 24/7 maintenance honestly. Let's see, scope ongoing SEO through our marketing partner while owning the one-time pre-launch SEO ourselves. So it's kind of showing us how we can fill some of those gaps. And it's 770 words. So all told, I mean, this took maybe 20 minutes. I forget exactly when we started, but this is a half a day of work easy without leveraging AI. And in the gaps here, I would have been able to do other things. So you could start to see how the efficiency of your business operation is a huge unlock with AI. The quality of this outline beats what most people, myself included, probably would produce in 3 4 hours of time. Claude read every page, and is it perfect? No, like I still need to bring my judgment to this, and I might have to adjust the tone or make some changes, but it got me 80% plus of the way there all day. And the difference between this and the first answer isn't AI, it's the prompt and the framework and the way that you communicate and leverage the tool effectively. Um, if you run a professional services firm like the Gnar, you live in RFPs and proposals and client deliverables. Every version of that, or every one of those items is some version of this where you have to read a lot and figure out what matters and write something smart in the response. And that cycle becomes your bottleneck. So Claude is not replacing your judgment, but it's giving you many hours back in your day to spend them on judgment instead of paperwork. You could picture pointing Claude at a 200-page data room and getting a red flag memo in 20 minutes instead of a weekend. The same skill that can read RFP can also read a stream of sensor and supply chain data and surface signal. So whether you are moving pallets or reducing methane or filing tax returns, the constraint is the same. So it's just too much information and not enough senior time to turn it into a decision. And that's where like that gap gets closed by using AI. Um, let's see here. I'm going to think move back to our slide deck here to get back on track. But I think we're moving on to Q&A next. Okay, Q&A. We've got a couple of these lined up already, but please feel free to continue sending them over in the chat. I'm going to start with this one is very common. We get this a lot. Is my data safe? Does Anthropic train on my conversations? As I mentioned, we use Claude team accounts, and these are paid plans. The pro team and enterprise plans are all paid. Anthropic does not train on these conversations, and your data stays private. The free tier has different terms, so probably best to go with a paid plan. Um, Also, might be worth starting with non-sensitive documents until you get more comfortable. But yeah, that's their according to their privacy policy. You definitely go into the weeds and read more on that. Next up, do I need to be technical to use this? Nick, do you want to take that one?
Sure. The short answer is absolutely not. If you can write an email, you can use Claude. As Mike showed, the interface is just a text box. We'll get into more advanced features in future sessions, but the basics are that simple. But as you grow more proficient, like you'll never outgrow the Anthropic toolkit. Its capabilities scale to the largest organizations. We are building skills or engineering teams using it, so it gets really advanced, but it's very approachable on day one, and you could literally install it and be productive within the first few minutes of using it.
Cool. Here's another one for you, Nick. This framework seems like a lot of work for one prompt. Is it really faster?
The first time it does take a few extra minutes, but as you saw, we're building a template. So every subsequent time you're performing these activities, you can paste your prompts into the template, drop in new information, and you're done. And what we found is one great prompt saves you hours across the year. So the next session, you'll be able to make those prompts permanent because you can paste them in and stop repeating yourself. And by breaking it down, you're going to get a number of artifacts along the way. It could be Word docs or summarized markdown documents. And those also can be saved and reused for other tasks, which result in a lot of time saving. So this becomes really important when you start layering in projects and Claude co-work. But as you'll find, as you continue to use it, each of those steps will save a significant amount of time.
What if I don't know what format I want? Um, this is a good question, and it's a bit of a meta response, but you just ask Claude. You just say, "What's the best format to present a quarterly comparison to a investment committee or whatever your case may be?" But I find this can be helpful as well with like uncovering assumptions as well. If you're not sure, if you're getting a bad output from Claude, you could ask it, what assumptions are you making in this response? And it'll enumerate those, and then you can give it more context that will help it to know what you really want from it. So when in doubt, just ask Claude. And let's see, how is this different from just using ChatGPT? Nick, you want to go for this one?
Yeah, both are really capable tools. Claude tends to perform better with long documents, nuanced writing, and detailed instructions. Uh, I would recommend trying both to see what fits your workflow. We tend to use Claude because for the business tasks that we do, we found that the output tends to be a little more reliable. And another huge reason that I prefer Claude is the integration ecosystem. We use at Gnar, we use Google Workspace, and the integration there is unbelievable. So between, even though Gemini does some of this, I vastly prefer the output of Claude. But just today, I was actually working on an RFP, and I was able to point it at a Google Drive directory and get all of that context. And that alone is one of the best features of it, and the quality of output. I just find it to be that much more buttoned up than Chat GPT. And the other reason, and Mike mentioned this, is we have Claude team accounts, and a lot of our time is spent in the Claude desktop app. Occasionally I get to have fun and use Claude Code, but most of our engineering team is using Claude Code so that we can have one integrated system across the board and even share artifacts and documents across the different tools. And it's so much easier than emailing things back and forth for prompt input. Just having all the documents available across the team is huge. So I guess in summary, I think the ecosystem that Claude and Anthropic provides is better today than that of ChatGPT.
Nick, I think you could help with this one as well. In my experience, Gen AI output can be unreliable even with a thorough prompting framework. Do you find yourself having to do a fair bit of double checking the agent's work?
Um, I could spend quite a bit on this one too, because there's like different frames of reference here. For Claude Desktop, not too much. I've been pretty happy. And like one mantra we do have at the Gnar is like you're still responsible for anything that it produces. So we always check the work, but in general, I can't say that I've had that many issues at generalizations and things of that nature. Sometimes numbers can, like, numerical analysis needs some double checking, but all in all, no horror stories of it sending hallucinated uh, garbage text off or anything like that. The part that I will save for future talk is when we get into the development aspect of it. There's a whole concept called evals, and that's a programmatic way of evaluating the output and providing like a scoring metric on how good that is. And that becomes very important if you're running prompts against code thousands of times and you need better data than just you skimming it on Claude desktop. And evals are the right tool for that and verifying that the output is correct. And we'll dive into that topic during a future session.
A couple of potential tips there are maybe take smaller bites, like do smaller chunks of work at a time. One, because I think Claude does better with that, or AI does better with that, but also it's easier to manually check the results of the smaller bites than 50 pages of text that it produces or whatever else it might go off and do. And another one is to manage the context window. Like if you find that your output is good for a while and then starts to go off the rails, you might be overloading the context window and look to, start a new chat or a new session and give it a prompt where you could, I, for example, I could download the markdown files that I just created with the requirements and our fit and everything, and I could start a new chat giving it the context of those documents and tell it to, draft the outline and that sort of thing as well. And that way it's working with a fresh context window, and will stay a little bit more accurate.
Yeah, and Mike, that's a good theme in general, and is something that we do encounter where oftentimes like too much information causes confusion and hallucination. So I always give it just enough context that it has what it needs, because sometimes things might contradict what it's trying to reason on, and that can cause issues. So the cure there is exactly what Mike said: clear the context window and start a new chat.
Great. That is all the Q&A we have lined up. So we can conclude here. I'm glad you all attended and hope you got some value out of today's session. Make sure you have registered for the webinar so we have your contact information. This will allow us to send our follow-up email communication with like what we covered and some prompt templates and cheat sheets and additional resources that we can send you, as well as information on upcoming sessions. By registering for this once, you are registered to participate in all of the sessions of the event series. We're doing this every other Tuesday, so we look forward to seeing you on July 14th when we'll dive into projects and workflows. This was the ground level. So this was an introduction to Claude and some ways to have effective prompts. There is a lot to cover from here to really help you get incredible value as an operator from using these tools and free up lots of time in your day. So I hope you will join us next time for projects and workflows. You will also have our contact information, so feel free to hit us up with any specific needs. Thank you all for the time, and we'll see you next time.